here for a while, and I think he went downstairs to do work because that's what Mr. Brigard does. So I'm going to take a 5-minute recess. Or does our regular meeting start at 7 or something?
He's right here.
Oh, good timing, Joe.
7:30, we're on for.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I forget. There's so many different commissions that I go to. Some start at 7, some start at 7:30.
I know.
Okay, so.
Oh, wow, speaking of
How did you do? Were you in the hallway?
Yes,
In the
he's
foyer?
right out there.
Okay.
Outside. I could hear everything.
Oh, man. Okay. Good for you, man. Okay, so we start with engineering, I guess? What department number is that?
105.
I hate this book. So Joe Brigard is our Director of Public Works. He wears many hats. 105 is the town engineer budget. Joe, we most of us have been through this once. Mr. Cunningham's new going through the budgets, but I know he's been brought up to speed. So you can give us a brief overlay, especially on this one.
Yep. There's not much here. It's mainly the salaries and a little bit of stormwater management, just because there is always some question. Town engineer is Victor Benny. The civil engineer one is Peter Gilberto. He's actually 60% of his salary is in this budget, 40% is in the water department budget. The biggest change is budget that you'll see the administrative assistant. We're not cutting someone. What I'm finding is that it takes more than 2 people to run the water and sewer department down there. And Marilyn Wright, the assistant that sits right outside of my office, she spends at least 25% of her time in the water department. So the right thing to do is shift some of her salary, 25% over her salary, over to the water department. So she's still working full-time the exact same amount of time. It's just that with all her tasks, this is the right place to slide that salary over. The engineer inspector is Gary Hyenka, and stormwater management is the wonderful unfunded mandates by the state as far as all our permitting for our MS4 permit. And then you have the dues, the transportation allowance, and miscellaneous. So there's not much here, but if you have any questions, I certainly would like to answer them for you.
I'll just leave it open to the floor here because it's a minimal budget with just personnel. Just get onto the microphone if you are going to.
Question, the whole issue of stormwater management. I know there's been the very long ongoing with the state and what they were going to mandate in terms of leaf collection and where are we as far as that is concerned?
That we're not there yet as far as them mandating those kind of leaf collections and everything like that. We do pick up leaves anyways. The biggest costs that are procured by departments is sampling costs. The DEP requires us to do quarterly sampling, and that there's
quarterly sampling of
the storms. Well, we have to do six different samples throughout town. 2 residential, 2 commercial, 2 industrial. It's every town in the state is required to do this, as far as it's called an MS4 permit, and just the cost of these, all the sampling. It used to be twice a year, now it's 4 times a year. Is very costly. So I have $4,000 here, but you'll see later in the Department 317 highway, I also have stormwater over there because of all the sampling that we have to do because of the state.
Now, do we send this to an outside lab? Is it the state lab or?
It's an outside lab. It's not a state lab. It's a for-profit lab.
And then you report it to the state?
Correct.
Do they mandate remediation if they? I mean, what?
Actually, they do.
We're collecting all this stuff. What happens?
What happens?
To
Yeah.
Well, that is part of the problem. Is that it's frustrating to towns because you take all this and you're giving a big database to the state on our dime. However. They do watch it, and if you meet certain criteria, and we actually have exceeded a few in our transfer station, you have to do something. We're in the process of trying to improve our stormwater system at the transfer station because of the sampling.
So do they look for heavy metal residue
all
sorts of different
metals,
things?
There's about 10.
Are they looking for bacterial levels as well?
Yeah, they're looking at all different kinds of levels. I don't have the exact list, but there's a number of criteria now. Based on all those criteria, it drives up the cost of sampling. If it was 1 or 2 things, but because of the amount of things they request us to do, it makes every sample round. And we take our own samples. It's not like we're having someone come in. Our own guys go out in the rain and grab the samples. It's just that's the cost. That's the lab cost of all these samples.
So with regard to my first statement, do we know, so all of that is still a work in progress? Any
Yes.
additional
The addition,
mandates are still up in the air?
Way up in the air.
they're up in the air.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, they certainly got held back by the state last year with the, what is it called, MS4?
Yeah, the municipal stormwater separate stormwater sewer system. It's MS4. There's four.
And there was a
S4.
huge thing about, was it the sulfur, removing this, from the sewage systems? A lot of the towns were going to be hit with a big charge.
Well, that would be that's sewer. That's not the
Yeah.
storm system.
But again, yet another
When that
state
comes, it
changing,
comes, yeah.
moving.
yeah,
If you're
Yeah.
taking notes, that's
Yeah.
another thing
They're-
for your
things
list.
coming. Okay,
they're
thank
all
you.
Unfunded mandates.
Yep.
Some of which haven't come yet. Some of these samplings have gone from 2 to 4 times a year. There's one for your list of state unfunded mandates. Are there any other questions on the engineering budget? There's many other budgets to review with Mr. McGaw. IT budget is buried where? What number?
109?
109.
109. The one my finger's on.
Put your finger on the pulse.
You're right. For again, we're bare bones all over town. IT database supervisors, Carmen. We do, for a small little town, we do great work with a new website, and we've fixed our servers. We had a major issue about this time last year with servers crashing and not backing up properly, et cetera, et cetera. We've done that. We've fixed it. A lot of that is in your capital budget. You'll see that later. Copier maintenance is relatively flat. Your office equipment, there's a big business here. There's a lot of copies and filing and things that go on in municipal government, and that's staying relatively flat as well. Are there any questions for Mr. Begaw?
How far are we into the contracts with line 214 and 215?
This is the last
214
year.
is year 5 of. It's just the last year.
Mhm.
And you said line 215. Line 215. We now have an annual contract with Star Computers for $31,000. It just provides our additional support. We have one person in IT. Most towns have more than that. So they do. And the police were just sitting here tonight, and they said something about Officer Rowland being their IT. We send Star over there. Star is the one that does. But the officer calls up Star to come over to help them. So between PD and from here. That's been an invaluable service to keep all the IT systems going. So that's an annual.
Okay, I'm just wondering when these contracts are going to come up for renegotiation.
Yeah, the
Copier this
the
coming year.
copier one will be
This will
next
the
year.
last year.
Will be this year?
well, this is the last year,
the-
so next fiscal year.
So-
not
Yeah.
not this
217.
this fiscal year coming up. The next fiscal
218.
year it will be renegotiated.
217.
17, 18
This is the last year of a 5-year lease
on fiscal year
on
16.
his
17.
proposed budget.
Joe, with the fiber line coming in, do you have resources for that? So I assume that's going to tackle some of this?
No,
Or is that not?
we have that all covered in here.
That's all covered in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions? We'll go into building maintenance, which is the biggie, I do believe, and that is budget number 113. This is custodians and telephones and electricity and all sorts of things
So-
regarding the buildings.
So there's a few more things going on beyond the IT and engineering. We're pretty straightforward. The maintenance, town buildings, you start getting a few more things going on. We're not adding any from a custodian help. It's all the same people. No one's being added to it. No hours are being added to this. If you go into the services, ironically, in contract operations 295 fire protection town, that jumped 67%. I also, unfortunately, wear 2 hats. I wear the hat of the water and sewer side, and that commission, it keeps pounding on us to try to raise the fire protection. The fire protection used to be annually, the water and sewer department used to charge, or the water department used to charge the town about $75,000 a year. And at that time, I guess the water department was flush in cash. So That got dropped from 75,000 to like 12,000. And there was a deal made, I guess, some years that they were going to keep incrementally going up at 10%, but 10% of not a lot is not a lot. So they've been talking about increasing the fire protection, but I also noticed that our secretary was working 25% of the time for water, and she was being charged at town, so we slid the water, 25% of the secretary over to the water, but we increased the fire protection to meet the commission. So
It's a dollar for dollar
it's
trade.
It's a wash.
Let's be really clear.
Yeah.
We're not increasing taxes here.
It's
dollar.
It's essentially a wash budgetary, but the salary is allocated to the right place, and the
Right.
water department or the water commission gets their higher fire protection fee from the town.
That includes the hydrants.
That's exactly what
is-
it includes.
it's
The
for-
fire
it's
protection
for the
is the hydrants.
hydrants.
Correct. It's the service of providing the hydrants. So that's the fire protection line. The custodial supply, pretty much everything, the water and sewer went up a little bit because we weren't raising the rates. I finally caught this. The water and sewer rates go up, but I wasn't raising the rate here, so
line
that's
here.
more of an actual cost. And we are able to decrease the heating oil to get, it's hard to project, even though the rates are very low now, it's hard to project what they're gonna be next winter. But from everything I've been told, they are gonna be lower, so I was able to drop that 5,000. So the total budget is only reflecting a 2.58% increase.
You lock in diesel, you lock in transportation fuels, but can you lock in heating oil now for a year
Well-
from now? Is that not how
Well-
that works?
I could, and
Okay.
this is the reason, is when I first got here, I was used to, in the other municipality, is putting out the bid, and we've always got our fuel from Guys, a
Right.
local business who
Right.
has a lot of taxable properties in here, but that still doesn't mean we shouldn't get the lowest price. So when I first got here, I actually shopped around, found out what the other towns were paying on their state contracts or their bid contracts, and I made Guys pay the same.
Wonderful.
So that's what we're doing, but Guys is not set up like a Dime Oil or a
No.
East River Energy, so they really can't block it in next year now, but in the fall or in the best timing, I lock in the whole year's supply, which is what I did this year at a favorable rate. So I'm trying to use a local vendor from East Lyme that's taxable, that pays taxes to town, but I'm also trying to get the best price for the taxpayers. So I think it's a win-win in not having Dime Oil or one of these companies
Yeah.
coming from
Right.
another town deliver right in front of him and charging, 2 cents less.
Can
That-
we, sorry,
That just seems very reasonable and taking care of our own, but also taking care of the tax base as well. It's very fair.
can we lock in natural gas?
Well, we could, but.
Or you think it's gonna
the
go
only-
lower, so there's
well, the
no
only-
point?
Well, the only natural gas we have, which is great
Is it
now,
Yankee?
is at the community center. We didn't have any natural gas, because, the Board of Ed has natural gas. Natural gas is on the north end of town, and all our municipal buildings are the south end.
So that's the,
But-
yeah, I'm thinking of the Board of Ed, of
But we're
course, yeah.
actually
They brought it up
finding,
at the high school.
Yeah.
we just switched to community center, and we're saving a lot we're now in natural gas. So that's the Yankee Gas rates. The rates are very low right now, so I haven't really done anything to lock those in for next year. But we're seeing the board was, and the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, approved the energy efficiency project at the community center. We're finding lots of savings already in the cost of energy at that building, so.
Have we heard, is Yankee Gas likely to extend any of the,
They briefly
Pipeline.
talked to me about, it wasn't for our benefit, they were trying, the state prisons were looking to try to,
and we might be
to
able
get
to
Yankee-
tap in on the
but-
way, kind of
well,
thing?
Well,
yes and no. They were looking at it because they were gonna cut down my brand-new road that I did on Roxbury, so I was explaining to them what they were gonna have to pay to do that, and then I haven't heard from them, so. They
They might
haven't
have
been,
changed their mind.
they haven't been so generous of bringing the Yankee Gas down to downtown, but they were, there was some talk of bringing it to the camp. Our best benefit of trying to get gas into these areas is to
Send it over to Camp
leverage
Niantic.
it with a camp or going to the prison, because
Right.
they're gonna be the ones paying for that infrastructure cost.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Joe, the Roxbury Road, you came before us a while ago talking about cleaning up some of the site.
Yep.
Do you have budget for that, or do you plan on coming back in the
that's-
future for an allocation? For
That's
that?
in the CIP under LoSiP funds.
Okay.
But I am also trying to, It's not your typical LoSiP project, because LoSiP doesn't like to pay for demolition, but I'm trying to sell it under enhancement, because it will enhance the property. So I'm working that out, but I do have money set aside in LoSiP to cover that. I'm hoping we can work with the fire departments to burn the building.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And not that building, the
Yeah,
building
yeah, I
next
know.
to it.
I know
The white
what
one.
you mean.
Holly
Yeah.
Gifts, because children's name is story, but in stuff like painting and cleaning up the site of ripping out the existing crappy pavement, I think our guys can do. So I'd like to do as much as we can, so I'm still on track to do that work this year. And I have some money set aside in LoSiP in the capital plan that you'll see.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure you have that balance.
It's identified.
Perfect. Thank you.
Again, you'll see that in the capital plan.
Yep.
As presented. Mrs. Hardy?
We heard for the first time tonight that the roof was leaking at the police station. Do you have money in this year's budget that could fix that, or are we looking at line 222 to take care of that?
Well, we did fix it this year.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we fixed it. The officers, we got word that the roof was leaking, that we sent out a contractor, they fixed the leak. It hasn't leaked since. I actually have, because of the damage that the water coming into the building, I have a contract, I'm hoping to get a price tomorrow on fixing, there's like ceiling tiles and some plaster that kind of fell down, and so that's being done in this year's budget, and I should be able to pay for everything that I have to do over there in the allocations I have.
Thank you. Good.
Good.
Anything else, Mrs. Cheesman? Mr. Cunningham?
No, I think all my questions have been
Right.
addressed. Thank you.
You'll find Mr. Braga's budgets are straightforward, to the point, and just wonderful to see, because they're usually very low numbers.
Yeah.
As big as these budgets are, the increases are always stomachable.
He'll be back in another.
You're gonna come back, I guess, unless you want to. You know what? He's got
Do we
a
have
family to
public-
go back to. Why
Public
don't we?
work?
Do we have public works?
We can't, because it's in the agenda.
It's a
it's
special
in
meeting,
the-
we can't change,
Oh.
we can't.
I'm sorry.
We've got 15 minutes.
So we can take a 12-minute break.
Move that
Any
up.
other questions, concerns, comments?
Yeah.
I'm gonna call for a,
No, wait. 1 minute, please.
yeah, why don't you get rid of the microphone so I know that you're talking?
Ooh,
I didn't hear you.
thank you.
This is just an executive summary of all the budgets that I oversee,
Wonderful.
without the water and sewer, obviously. But just to highlight, because we just went through them so quick, a total of the engineering, IT, maintenance of town buildings, and highway sanitation, which we'll talk about later, but is $4.991 million on this proposed budget, for a $95,836 increase from last year's budget. We usually talk about expenditures, and very rarely we talk about revenue, but I came before this board about the streetlight rebate as far as, and we're proceeding forward. The audit's being done right now, and with that, $122,000 and some of the other revenues, we also came before this board and raised the commercial hauler fees, which is giving us an extra. It shows only an extra $9,300, but in reality we're taking in about $20,000 extra this year. So with the extra revenue that we're getting next in the proposed budget next year, and the increases, actually all those budgets that I oversee are going to actually be $18,000 less than this past year. So there's no increase; it's a decrease. So that's.
I love seeing
Yeah.
those revenues.
Well, we don't usually talk about the revenues, but I'm trying to track the revenues more now, and we're actually taking in more money, so that's a good thing.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes the revenues get lost in the expense budgets.
I think we
And
should
Anna and I,
start
during the
with
last,
the revenue and then figure out
Well,
how we can spend.
I've been talking about, since we have a couple of minutes, been talking about putting the revenue right at the bottom here, because there's some budgets that are very revenue dependent, or the building department, for instance. There's the building department and the assistant building inspector, but they also have an increase in revenues.
Guess what? We used to have that until one of your predecessors decided to change it.
our predecessors. um, it might be helpful to us to be
It
able to
would
see
be
that.
very helpful.
Do you like that idea too?
I do. I liked it then.
Mrs. Hardy, we're on the
I like
on
it
the same
now.
page more
Remember,
often than
we have that net budget analysis that's in front of your books.
the
It's,
net-
it's if you're looking back at the budget tab, there's a net budget analysis, and it goes through the budget department by department, and it shows, the proposed budget for 16-17 along with any operating, revenues, and then the net budget increase or decrease. So, I mean, it's on a
But-
separate sheet of paper.
It's also
but
nice to see it
on the,
with the department.
as we flip, as we talk, as we look, as we take out our calculators and try to figure it out. But there it is too. Page 2 under your budget, right up at the front of the book, shows proposed the operating revenues of state grants that we're anticipating, which would answer some of the questions about the police grants from earlier tonight. Then the net budget is far different than the proposed. We'll take a 9-minute recess, stretch our legs, and come back to a regular meeting.
Okay.